wacky world of MultimediaJay.
I spent the day sneezing more so than coughing, so I probably sound a little bit more close to normal today than I did around this time yesterday. Making some progress here, but I now have a queue of videos to edit together. I just don't feel like doing any editing right now. I have more curiosities that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. So let's get straight to it and just have a backlog of stuff to put together later. First order of business, considering what happened with Tuxedo earlier, I want to try something a tad outlandish here with the silver bullet. So let me get Gparted on here and let's nuke everything off of that previous Linux installation. Not like putting Kubuntu back on is really hard in the first place. The crap top is done. The old compact laptop from 2010 is done. I will make no attempts to use it again. However, the recovery disks are still here, which contain the Windows 7 reinstall, which was a license that connected to a free Windows 10 upgrade. Now, this should not work, and I hope that this can show you folks what happens if you try and use one of these system-specific recovery disks to reinstall Windows somewhere else. It used to be something I used to be annoyed by so much that I didn't have a real copy of the OS that I was using, but I just had some system recovery disk that was vendor specific. I remedied that during the Windows XP era, and I insisted on having real copies of XP, even if they cost more, as opposed to system recovery disks. And this is why. Let's try booting off of this compact disk and reinstalling Windows 7, which should not work. The way these OEM packages usually work is there's something physical on the motherboard that the installer looks for, and if it's not there, or even if it's not the same, the installer will not go anywhere. Let's see if these companies may have gotten stupid in the last 10 years. And by 10 years, I mean I bought the system in 2010. Last time I dealt with this vendor-specific stuff was 2000 with my original HP. There it is, right there. This is what I figured would happen. This is the lockout. I guess the other time it just glitched because I popped out the CD, but okay, now I can officially throw out these CDs. Finally, free up some space in the Windows XP box that I have all my Windows CDs in. So, yeehaw! Of course, the Windows XP box, that'll be less and less necessary in the years to come because Windows licensing is now cloud-based. I consider that a big plus. So anyways, good. I'm glad there's a lockout in here and it works, because I can actually do the right thing and only use Windows on one machine, two machines, whatever the license calls for. And I respect the work that Microsoft puts into the polished, at least, that is in Windows 10. So, there's problems with Windows 10, privacy issues, and forced upgrades and forced patches, which are annoying as heck and bring the worst of corporate IT to the consumer world. But in terms of polish and consistency over the years, well, at least since Windows 8, polish and other stuff like that, there are some things that Windows gets right. So, everything's still nuked from before, let's put Linux back on. Actually, no. Let's put Windows XP on this thing and answer a question I have about why this thing isn't too suitable as an ultimate XP machine. There we go. So as Windows XP is installing here, let's talk about what specifically is going on. I don't intend on keeping XP on this machine. I'm thinking I may do a flashback system to the XP days on the 2005 system, which might be a bit more appropriate for this sort of thing. Dual core is kind of a thing that first started becoming a thing in the Vista era. XP just lasted a lot longer than it was supposed to because Vista was such a disaster. So I'm actually thinking for a better Windows XP experience, it would be more prudent on my part to create a system that is single core. So do everything in the 2005 system, maybe even with a mechanical hard drive. So we can, here's what the bad old days were like when you had to wait for the machine to stop grinding every time you turned the computer on. But on the way to returning this machine to Linux for its concentrated coolness to be any curiosities I have about Linux, using the OSs, trying the distros and things like that, what I want to see is how much of the 4 gigs of RAM is available in this historically 32-bit OS. Now there have been folks like, influenced by folks like Druaga and whatnot on here, who have made so-called Ultimate XP machines, Ultimate DOS machines, Ultimate 98 machines, period piece PCs, if you can even fathom such a thing, that are supposed to represent a bygone era in computing. Today I would do such a thing with virtual machines, but some people just gotta have the box. So anyways, we're going to do some experimenting here and fool around with this. And I just want to see how much RAM is available when XP finally comes up. The odds are I'm not keeping XP on this machine. The odds are this thing will probably end up as a Linux machine again, and we'll go XP probably with mechanical drive just for old time's sake on the 2005 system. But just for the heck of it, because there is a mathematical cap on 32-bit programming and whatnot, there actually is a RAM cap for 4 gig machines running Windows XP. As I remember from when the 9-to-5ers got rid of XP a few years ago when it went into life. Oh yeah, we got all the computers up to 4 gigs, but they're not reporting as having 4 gigs of RAM because XP is 32-bit. Yeah, so let's see what happens when XP comes up here. There's a screen that I haven't seen in a while. What a pity. It's nice and colorful. And it's also stretched out because when Windows XP came out, widescreen wasn't even a thing. Yeah. It doesn't feel like that long ago to some people out there that Windows XP hit the scene with that Madonna ad campaign and stuff like that, and the pretty picture of the rolling plains and the blue skies and everything, and stuff along those lines. But yeah, XP is a relic from a bygone era. Matter of fact, I'm already betting that I don't even have to worry about having this machine hooked up to the network, because I'll bet any money that the motherboard is so much newer than this system that the network card doesn't, or the network chip doesn't even start up automatically. It requires drivers. So I will unplug the network cable just for the heck of it, but I don't think I'd have to worry about that. I'll bet any money the network chip doesn't even work. That this is a 2007 system running a 2001 OS. There it is, right there, Ethernet controller, question mark. So even if I had the cable plugged in, I'd have nothing to worry about. That's okay, because I'm not keeping XP on this machine. It's an absolute waste of a perfectly good Linux machine. Service Pack 2, woohoo! But here's the kicker right here. 3.25 gigs of RAM. So not all the RAM is actually addressable or usable or something along those lines. Just as bad as those cheapo computers from back in those days that set aside some RAM for graphics memory. So you'd buy a piece of junk E-machine with its 64 megs of RAM, which would be slow as molasses on Windows 2000, and then you would find out 12 megs of it was being used for graphics. Yeah, no thanks. That's what graphics cards are for. Okay, let's quit wasting this perfectly good Linux machine. Nuke XP. There we go. G-parted. Let's just get rid of everything right here. I am thinking about revisiting the whole Ultimate XP machine thing with the 2005 system when I can have SSDs and everything. I don't want a mechanical drive be cool, just to remember what it was like, but I think really what I'd like to do is see what Windows XP could have done with an SSD if the technology was contemporary to its era. So I have one more SSD to get in order to make that happen, and I think I know how I would make such a swap. It would require another round of equipment swapping to swap SSDs again, but hey, whatever works. There we go. Yay, Linux! And this is actually Ubuntu, actually it's Kubuntu with KDE, 1610 Yakety Yak. I figure if you create an OS that's called Yakety Yak, I should try it at least once. That's almost as comical as naming OSs after food like all those Android releases do. Lollipop, Kit Kat, Marshmallow, Ice Cream Sandwich. Darn it, now I'm hungry. There we go. Getting Kubuntu going here with these cute little Kubuntu characters here. So I use Linux primarily to satiate any curiosities I have about the OS, as well as how the open source world is doing nowadays. There's a couple of times when the open source and FOSS community really gives regular software a run for its money with some of the tools that are out there for some things here and there. So it's not really open source, or FOSS isn't really the slur word that it used to be in terms of, oh yeah, nobody's going to care about it because nobody owns it or something like that. I've heard those kinds of things before, but I've always had a curiosity about Linux, but traditionally I've lacked the hardware to really poke around in it very much. Folks are like, oh, you gotta have a whole nother system, you don't want to have a dual boot. Yeah, well, I have a whole nother system now, and I still don't use Linux anywhere near as much as I should. So I want to remedy that. I think Core 2 Duo with a decent Radeon and whatnot will be more than sufficient enough to experience Linux in a desktop environment, and maybe consider trying it on a more robust system later if I can find some high-end use for it. But as it is right now, the primary and secondary systems are better off staying Windows 10 for now. But that doesn't mean I can't mess around with Kubuntu on the Silver Bullet. Sudo apt-get update, sudo apt-get upgrade, sudo apt-get blah 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 blah. But at least the command prompt stuff works. The graphical stuff kept telling me there was 100-something updates and then wouldn't show me what they were. So I'm like, bust out the command prompt! Sometimes you gotta go all server style with the Unix roots of Linux in order to get things done here. Oh look, LibreOffice, new updates, woohoo!
Linux is just a kernel, it's not really an operating system, and you should refer to it as GNU/Linux because Richard Stallman says so.
Downgrading amidst the Rolovision back to Xenial Xeris 0.1 long-term support release, because as usual, whenever I have a latest release of Linux, stuff doesn't work 100%. I'm guessing recent hardware and whatnot, the support for that gets put in with new releases and whatnot, but more dated hardware like this Core 2 Duo era system, that can come later. So I think I may need to stick with the long-term releases. Plus, you know, I don't want Linux changing every other time I go to use the darn thing, so I think I'll stick with I'll be sticking with the 5-year releases as well. Things are a bit more fleshed out and mature, and in the case of Xenial Xeris, it's had a 0.1 release ever since V Westlife toured a new one, because
Xenial Xeris seriously sucks.
But at least Xenial Xeris still has the Kubuntu critters, or whatever the heck those cartoon characters are. So yeah, we're going to try 1604 LTS. This is also going to be the 0.1 release and things like that. I'm also hoping that sound and the older stuff that I have in this works a little bit more out of the box, now that folks have had some time to make some drivers for it. Otherwise, we can figure something else out, but I do want to experiment with Linux in some way, shape, or form, so Kubuntu, of course, has been my favorite distro for a while because I used to use KDE with Linux Mandrake back in the day. I actually think Druaga has a few Linux Mandrake videos where he tried getting Mandrake working on modern hardware. Actually, I think I might still have the Red Hat 5 that I first experimented with Linux on back around the start of the millennium, when I screwed up my brand new out-of-the-box HP computer because I nuked the partition table to install Lilo, and even the recovery disks wouldn't work. Like, hey Dad, I screwed up the computer. What? You only been on campus for a month. My uncle, normally the more tech-savvy of that generation, was like, what the heck is a Red Hat Linux? So I had to research how to fix my computer via fixing the partition table for the first time on my own in the school's computer labs. Thank goodness this wasn't the post-PC era back then. Imagine if it was a laptop school and I nuked my school laptop less than a month after starting. Oh yeah, I'd be off to a really good start with IT. Stop trying to get Linux running on your school laptop! Already an improvement over Yakety Yak. The update tool actually shows the updates instead of denying that my system needs them, and then I have to manually override things with sudo and the command prompt. Or excuse me, the terminal. Yes, I think this is usable for goofing around in Linux. The sound actually works on the first try, unlike Yakety Yak. Anywho, shutdown. It still shuts. Well, I don't know what that is. Might need some work on the drivers. That's one of the neat things about Linux, though. So many things that you take for granted in the Windows world, you can't take for granted in the Linux world, because it's all very, very tweakable and customizable. And so you start having to rethink things, and this helps keep you on your toes. So here's the concentrated coolness of these systems. Tuxedo is for the experiments where you allegedly don't need a powerful processor to game. It's not efficient no matter what I do, so we can overclock the heck out of it and see if the chip burns itself out, because there's 95-watt chips that can replace the 125-watter if it cooks. The silver bullet is for Linux, goofing around in Linux, and Core 2 era, how much you can do in Linux with the Core 2, because back in the day I once heard that Linux was a great system for older hardware. We shall see about that, considering this Core 2 system is contemporary with those refurbs out there and whatnot. So, that is where we go from here in terms of these two systems and what we do with them all. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.